My guest today on Creative Inspired Happy is Lisa Jewell, #1 New York Times and international best-selling author of 24 novels. Her latest psychological thriller, Don't Let 'Em In, is out now. Today, we talk about Lisa's preferred reading format, physical books, ebooks, or audiobooks, and her dark secret as a reader. Why she writes and what has kept her going in such a long and successful career. Behind the scenes of her writing process for Don't Let 'Em In. How she keeps her stories fresh to make sure she's not repeating herself with each new book. What the most misunderstood part of being a best-selling author is. A few sneaky hints about her next book. Her favorite interactions with readers, one thing that readers might be surprised to find out about her, and so much more. Creative Inspired Happy is a video podcast featuring interviews with the biggest names in books, as well as rising literary stars, about what made them fall in love with stories, why they write, their biggest successes and disappointments, and of course their latest books, all hosted by me, New York Times bestselling author Evelyn Skye. You can join our warm community for free to get behind-the-scenes insights about author life, book recommendations, the opportunity to ask questions of upcoming podcast guests, and more. Just go to creativeinspiredhappy.com or follow the link in the episode notes. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to Creative Inspired Happy. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yes, doing very, very well indeed.
Well, it's really exciting because your new book, Don't Let 'Em In, is out already, and we're going to talk so much about it. But first, because we have so many readers and writers who are listening, I would love to get your take about you as a reader. And I'll give you a couple easy ones to get started so we're, easing into this conversation. So do you prefer hardcovers, paperbacks, audiobooks, or ebooks?
So, as you might be able to see if you're watching from the shelves behind me, I used to be the paperback queen. I'd very rarely buy a hardback, only if it was something that I was absolutely desperate to read. But in recent times, I'm going to blame this on COVID, on the COVID years. I've just lost my ability to read print. I can't hold my focus on a print book unless I'm lying on a sun lounger for some reason. I don't know why that would be. So I try and save all my most exciting, anticipated books. I try and take away with me on holiday, in any format, hardback or paperback. But for the rest of the year, day-to-day reading, I do it all on audio these days. I'm a big audio
That's so
convert.
interesting. I do think there's just been such a huge uptick in audiobook popularity in the last few years. So it's interesting to trace that back to COVID for you, because I think for me, around that time, I got into physical books again. I used to read all on my e-readers, but I just craved, maybe it felt like an experience, to have the
Yes.
book.
Yes, more of a physical experience, I can imagine. Yeah. Oh, so you had the completely opposite experience to me.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned reading on a sun lounger or going on holiday. Do you have a favorite place to read?
You mean a favorite country or just a
Or
favorite?
or just like a cozy nook in your house? Is there just a place that you
Oh, no, I
crave that
never see.
feels
I'm
like it?
terrible. The minute I've got time to sit in a cozy nook and read a book, can I tell you what I'm doing?
Yes.
I'm either sitting in a cozy nook staring at my phone, or I'm curled onto the armchair watching television, which is, it's just terrible. I genuinely, unless I'm having to read a book for a very particular reason, supposing I'm doing an event with an author or I've been asked to quote for a book for an author, and I know I've got a finite amount of time, in which case I kind of view it like work, which is awful thing to say. And then I'll find time. But into that luxurious, God, all the years I had young children, I never had time to read. And I just thought, God, if only I had time to read, I would just spend all day curled up in a cozy armchair reading books. And now my children are grown and I could read all day, and I don't. I just stare at my phone instead. It's a true tragedy. It really is. So yeah, genuinely my favorite place to read a book is on a sun lounger when I'm not at home, away from home, out of routine. My favorite place.
I really don't think that's that odd of an experience compared to
I
most
know.
people.
Still sad though. Still
But
sad.
but the
I used to
great
consider myself to just be a voracious reader. Just always. I used to sit on the sofa watching TV at night, excited to go to bed and get back to my book. And now I don't even read a book in bed. It's terrible. But yeah, I think it is kind of more of a common issue these days, sadly.
Well, the great news is that we are going into summer reading season and people are going on holidays. And so hopefully they'll pack Don't Let Him In with them in their beach
They
bag.
absolutely should. If this book was designed for anything, it's to be taken on holiday and read by a swimming pool or by the ocean, definitely.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. I want to talk in general about your writing career first before we delve into this book in particular. You have written everything from rom-coms to psychological thrillers. And instead of asking you about your career path and how you did that, I want to know, why do you write? Is there something that drives you?
Well, there's two things. There's two things. Number one, I'm currently a very successful writer whose publishers really, really want to publish my books. And therefore, I'm signing contracts very regularly with deadlines on them and delivery dates. And thus, if I want to keep everybody happy and keep the machinery moving, the machinery is very finely oiled and I don't want to be the one to mess it up, then I have to keep writing. Number two, I know. In fact, there's three things. Number two is my job, and I don't have anything else to do. I don't have hobbies. I don't have another job. I don't even have children really to look after these days because they're so big. They don't need looking after anymore. I have a dog that needs walking once a day. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to do. What else am I going to do all day? And number three, it is genuinely the only thing throughout my very long life that I have discovered that I'm good at. I'm very average in most respects. Um, and one thing I'm really good at is writing, and that is something that I am becoming more and more aware of. The older I get, and the more books I write, and the bigger my readership becomes, is I think I am just essentially good at writing books, and that's a really satisfying thing. That's a really nice thing. You know, people talk about imposter syndrome, and I might have had that many moons ago. I really do not have that anymore. I'm pretty sure I'm good at writing books. And what a lovely thing to wake up every morning and get to do something that I'm good at. Doesn't mean I necessarily always enjoy it. Sometimes it's really painful. But I'm doing something that I know that I'm good at, and I know that is going to make other people happy. It's glorious. It's wonderful. I couldn't. I yeah. I could not be a luckier girl if I tried.
Yeah, it's a rather marvelous career to get to spend your time
Yeah.
doing.
Yes.
What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about being an author, or like particularly, let's say, a best-selling author of your caliber, with your visibility?
I think that people think that authors who've reached a certain level in their career are sort of slightly protected from everything, and that they kind of have stopped living a real life, and they're in this rarefied environment. And it's possible, maybe someone like J.K. Rowling. I don't know. I can't imagine her life, and maybe she would refute any suggestion that the quality of the life she lives is any different to how it would be if she wasn't such a successful writer. I don't know. I can only speak for myself and my writer friends. But really, our lives are just pretty much the same as they always were. I walk my own dog. I clean my own house. I pack my own suitcases. I go, when I'm traveling for work, I don't have an entourage. I don't have anyone to do my hair. It's kind of not as rarefied, I think, and you're not as protected, um, as I think there's a perception that somehow when you've reached a certain level in a career as a writer, that there's all these people around you and you don't really have to do anything apart from just sit in a gilded tower writing books, and then somebody does your hair and puts you in a car and you turn up at a book event, and that sort of Hollywood film version of being a successful. And it's
Oh,
just not
sure,
like that.
yeah.
It's
And
just not like that. Like it's not
The Hollywood version is always that you just wake up and you write a book, and 3 days later
yeah.
it's done.
Oh yes, and there's that as well. They don't include any of the delays and the time that it takes and how long these cycles take to evolve every time you start writing a book to the point at which it appears on a bookshelf in a bookshop. That's always like truncated into this, like, yes, which is hilarious. No, it's much more. I know a lot of successful writers quite well. We're very good friends, and all of our lives are pretty, we get to do special things, but just in terms of waking up in a house with a family and responsibilities and domestic stuff to do, and a relationship to and children, it's all the same. It's all the same.
It's actually kind of a lovely sort of celebrity in a way. You go to book events and
It
people
is.
recognize you, but you can still go to the grocery store, unless you are one of the
Absolutely.
very few whose faces are everywhere.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I remember when I was a teenager following a pop star around a supermarket in London who was famous at the time. And as I was, because I was so excited, and as I was doing this, having always wanted to be famous, I just suddenly thought, oh, I would actually hate to be famous. I would hate to be in the supermarket and have some weird teenage girl following me around. And I decided, I remember saying to my mother, because I'd always told her that I wanted to be famous one day. And I remember saying to her, I've decided I don't want to be famous anymore. I just want to be famous in my field. And lo and behold, that's sort of how my life has ended up. And it's the best of all possible worlds, really, to be successful and to be known, but not to be famous. It's perfect.
Yes, I love that entirely. Okay, so you also do know other successful authors, and I'm curious because my friends and I talk about this. There are rumors out there that once you reach a certain level of success, you're not really edited anymore. And do you think that this is your experience or your friends' experiences where your editors don't push you anymore? Do they have to stroke your egos and make sure, hey, let's keep Lisa happy so she doesn't jump to another publisher?
That is such a brilliant question, which I'm going to really enjoy answering. I know exactly what you're talking about. And there are some writers whose editors at a certain point in the writer's career do kind of let go and relinquish control. Um, and I know the books that you're talking about, and they often end up being really big. There's just too many words and too many pages. And I tend not to read books like that because I look at them and I think I know what you're going to be. You're just a big unedited pile of something that I haven't got the time in my life or the headspace to engage with. Um, but the writers I know still, well, certainly my editor, um, I depend on her. I depend on her wholly to show me the way with my books. I would hate it. I'd be really worried and would think that I was losing something hugely important to me in my career if I gave her a book and she said, that's fine. Yeah, just absolutely fine. Lovely. Let's just send it to copy edits. I would panic because for me, it's all in, obviously, writers self-edit, and I'm
Hmm.
a big fan of self-editing, but somebody else's edit is massively, massively important part of the finished product for me. And if somebody wasn't doing that for me, I would not feel comfortable or confident at all. And it's the same, we have WhatsApp groups with me and various writer friends, and so many of the conversations we have on those groups or in face-to-face situations where we're drinking cocktails, obviously, as we all do, as successful writers. No, in face-to-face situations, we talk about the editing process, and we talk about waiting to get the editing notes back and feedback from our editors, and it's so important. And no, not something that we take for granted. And I don't really understand where the difference lies between a successful writer who still wants to be edited, who has a team around them, who still insist on editing them, and those writers who have a sort of live in a slightly different kind of looser world. I'm not sure what the difference is between those two types of worlds and two types of authors, but it is a thing. But it's not something I've experienced or my friends, thankfully, because I genuinely, that's the death knell. I think once people stop editing your books, I'm not quite sure what the point is anymore, apart from just selling paper to people.
I completely agree. Speaking of which, let's talk about your latest book, Don't Let Him In. Tell us about the premise for anyone who hasn't already gotten a copy, which I don't know what they're doing if they haven't picked up a copy. But what is Don't
Oh,
Let Him In
absolutely.
about?
Yes. Do not wait another minute. Go and collect one immediately. Um, it is, it's very simple. It's essentially a book that was inspired by the hours I have spent watching Netflix documentaries, listening to podcasts, reading memoirs about men who, in various different ways, um, and very, very different situations, but they all are doing the same thing: is they're romance scammers, they're dirty johns, they're Tinder swindlers. They're the sort of men who lying is their mother tongue. They don't know how to tell the truth, but they are ultimately incredibly charming. They've got all the tools in their arsenal to whisk a woman off their feet and get that woman completely under their control just by being really lovely to them. And I just have immersed myself so much in this sort of genre of true crime craziness. And I noticed that something that was missing from all of these podcasts and memoirs and documentaries was the man. Slippery creatures, these men. They just sort of float off into the horizon, and nobody ever gets to talk to them or ask them questions or say, well, why did you do that? Why did you treat those women like that? What was your motivation? Why didn't you just get a job rather than conning women out of their life savings? Why didn't you just choose a woman and settle down and live a normal life? I just wanted to understand so badly what motivates these men. So ultimately, that's what this book is. It's my take of getting inside the head of one of those men. So I have this main character, and he's called Nick Radcliffe, and we meet him at the beginning of the book when he's just made contact with a grieving widow called Nina Swan, who's just lost her husband in tragic circumstances. And Nina Swan's daughter, Ash, gets a bad feeling about him. So it's really kind of Ash's investigation into this guy who's just turned up in their lives as we watch Nick's spider web of other connections and other marriages getting bigger and bigger and bigger chapter by chapter.
That sounds fascinating. This book explores that fine line, I think, for women between feeling safe and feeling watched. And now you also talk about having Nick's perspective. So I'm curious, how do you get deep into the heads of these characters with such different emotional experiences? And how do you stay authentic to them without judging them already as an author, as you're letting the story
Yes.
unfold and letting the reader discover who the characters really are?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question because I always try and do that with my bad characters. Well, let's call them difficult characters. I don't want to judge them. I want to just spend time with them and sit in their shoes and sit inside their head and work out what went wrong with you. Why are you behaving like this? Show me your good side. Show me the things that I should like about you. Show me, you know, your deepest thoughts. And so with all of my bad characters, I don't want my readers to judge them. And in fact, with my last novel, None of This Is True, I kind of like a lot of readers really hated Josie. Like that was it, 100% anti Josie, which I kind of thought, oh God, have I actually failed this character? Because I never wanted my readers to feel like that about her. I wanted a sense of kind of interest in her and maybe even a sort of sense of sympathy towards her. Probably less so with Nick because he's so awful. But still, I gave this character, as I was writing him, so many chances to redeem himself. And even when I was going into his backstory, I was looking for something that might have happened to him as a child that might explain the way he was. And I'm not going to go into spoiler territory and tell you where I ended up with that. But I just really wanted to get to the damaged person inside and find explanations for his behavior. So, yeah, I find it really easy is the wrong word, uncomplicated and enjoyable to spend time in the heads of these very damaged and confusing and complicated people who behave in ways that none of us can quite understand, and ways that I'm assuming none of my readers certainly would ever behave, but have probably come across in their lives or even had experience of this sort of behavior. So yeah, those are the characters I in fact find the most satisfying and the easiest to write, because I don't want to sound pretentious, but they're kind of giving themselves to me, and rather than me having to, you know, with the straighter characters, the more grounded characters, I have to do a lot more work to make them interesting and get them to jump off the page. These characters don't need that amount of work.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, this is a perfect segue into a question I have from our community because, as we talked about before we started recording,
Yes.
Creative Inspired Happy is not just a video podcast; we're also a community of readers and writers. And I always invite our group in a chat beforehand if they have any questions for our upcoming guests. And so Trista has a question for you, and her question is: have you ever had an antagonist that you were writing have something happen where it turned out it wasn't working out and you had to change who that character was in his essence or her essence?
Um, quite often. That happens quite often because I like to people my books in the early stages because I write without a plan. I like to people them with characters who I haven't quite decided about yet and give them a bit of leeway. So I like to throw shade on a lot of my characters in the early pages so that I can kind of, if I am going to bring them down the road into darkness later on, I can see that it was already there. And so very often, so the book that I just finished writing, in fact, my 24th novel, which I finished the first draft of last week, I set up this character in the second chapter who in my head, I can say this because it's not a spoiler because the book went in such a completely different direction after this point. He was going to basically start a sex cult in this woman's house. And so the reader's first view of him would be that he was incredibly shady, giving off really bad vibes, not to be trusted. But as I was writing him, he just kept showing me this really soft side of him that I hadn't been expecting. And the softer he became, the harder the woman he was sharing a house with became. And then the whole thing flipped over so that the woman who was going to be the victim ended up being the abuser. I am spoiling this horribly, by the way, but I'm thinking by the time this book comes out, nobody will remember me saying
That's right.
this. Yeah. So this has just happened. So I started off thinking that the man was going to be the abuser and the woman was going to be the victim, and it just swapped completely. And that was a really interesting dynamic to explore, actually, because that's something that doesn't get written about very often. So yeah, it does happen quite a lot.
Oh, I can't wait for that one to come out. But I want to talk about your process because now you've revealed that you don't really plan ahead of time what's going to happen. And take us behind the scenes. Let's do this with Don't Let Him In. What was your
Yeah.
writing process like for that? And you're not outlining, or do you have an
Yeah.
outline? What does that look like for you?
No, all I knew. So I knew the first scene. I always know the first scene before I start writing a book. Well, you'd hope, wouldn't you? At the bare minimum that you'd know what the first scene was going to be. So I always do have the first scene. And my first scene was anonymous man turning up at this big white house by the seaside with a bunch of flowers from a delivery van and giving it to a young girl at the front door who is in the middle of her father's funeral. So I had that. I knew that anonymous man was going to be the guy, and the reader will work that out very quickly. And did I have anything else beyond that? I knew that I wanted to put a spotlight on another woman that he was also having a relationship with. And I kind of had a vague idea of who she might be and what her situation might be. And I thought, oh, well, if he's delivering flowers, then she must run a flower shop. This is all in the first couple of chapters. This isn't spoilers. So that, oh, she runs a flower shop. Okay, so that was kind of it. I had this woman who's married to a man. She runs a flower shop. He's delivering flowers to this house where someone's just died. And beyond that, I knew that obviously this guy was going to have a very, very shady and complicated past that I was going to have to dig into and explore. And I was going to have to find the women, because it was obviously going to be women. I was going to have to find them as I wrote and bring them in at the right moment. But I didn't have any clue who they were going to be until I got to the moment where they would be uncovered. So no, very, very, I come to a book with nothing. And the lovely thing about being at my point in a long career is that I now can feel excited about that, as opposed to, why haven't I got a chapter plan? Why haven't I got any clue what I'm doing? Why haven't I written anything down? I should have planned this. And now, 24 books in, I get excited. I think I don't want to think any further. I don't want to. I've got my first scene and I kind of got a vague idea of what might happen after that first scene, but I don't want to think beyond that. I want to find out while I'm writing it. So I
I love
embrace it
that.
now.
Yeah, I mean, you've earned this confidence and you know from experience that you can do it, right? That you can sit down
Correct.
and it's going to happen. You know how to write a book. So that's
Yeah.
fun that you get to sit down and play every day. Do you revise a lot, or are you revising as you go, or are you writing a whole draft first and then saying, let's
Yeah.
go back and see what I need to fix?
Yeah, I do write a good first draft, actually. The rhythm of my writing, and it's a very common rhythm for most writers is that 1,000 words a day. And that just sort of always just means that I've written just enough to move the story on, but I haven't written so much that I've gone down and, I've written myself into a corner, or I've desperately put words on the page that have taken me in completely the wrong direction. It just stopped. I've written 1,000 words. I've moved the story on 1,000 words. So let's just move away from the computer, walk the dog, get some headspace, have a shower, think about how it might evolve from those 1,000 words into the next 1,000 words. So writing like that, and not doing, I know some writers maybe write in huge bursts and like write thousands of words, and I couldn't do that without a plan. I would get myself into a terrible mess. So doing it like that means I very rarely have to rework, and certainly not unpick and start again and, oh God, it's all gone horribly wrong, I'm going to delete thousands and thousands of words. Tweak, change, but not completely rework the whole thing. So yeah, and that's another thing with the confidence, is knowing that the rhythm of my writing means that I'm not making too many mistakes as I go.
And are you writing 1,000 words just per day, or are you doing, let's say, a morning session and then you go and walk the dog and have lunch and come back and write another 1,000 words?
Yeah, when it totally depends how much free time I've got and how much other stuff is going on. But when I've got a whole day, I will tend to use the morning to do domestic admin and work admin, then work the dog, and then work the dog. I don't work her, walk the dog, and then start writing when I get back. So say 2 or 3 o'clock, I'll start writing, which is quite unusual to write in the afternoon and not the mornings. Closer to the end of the book, I'll start writing at sort of 11 a.m., do a couple of hours, walk the dog, and then do 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. But certainly in the first half of the book, maybe even 2/3, I'm just doing that chunk of writing at the end of the day, which is nearly always more than long enough to write 1,000 words.
That makes sense. It's when you're still discovering at that early phase, maybe
Yes,
you just need a little bit more space between the writing sessions in order to let
totally.
your brain figure out what's the next chunk.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Okay, I have a question for you from Michael B. And he wants to know, before you start a book, don't let him in. Are you envisioning anything to make sure that this book is different from what you've written before? Because you have this
Oh,
huge canon now of work.
yes. Well, so many brilliant questions. Oh, that is something that is really kind of becoming more and more obvious to me the more books I write. And I think maybe that was why I did this sort of switcheroo with the two characters in the book that I just finished, because I was starting to go down the path of this guy being a bit dodgy and doing a cult in this house. And I thought, well, I've already done that. I did that in the family upstairs. I had a guy who moves into a house and does a culty thing, and there's all sorts of bad sex things happening. And I've kind of done that territory already. And I did try and persuade myself that it would be different and I could do it differently and it would feel like a different book. But ultimately, I think my instincts took me away from that because it was ground I'd already covered. And instead, what I managed to do was cover ground I've never covered before, which is female domestic abuse. So, yes, it is something that is quite challenging. And it does happen quite a lot when I'm thinking not of the idea for a book necessarily, but ideas within the books. It's increasingly harder and harder to think of things I haven't already written about. So yeah, 24 books. I've kind of, and also to answer Michael's question as well, I think there is a sense of wanting each book to have a very different feeling and a different atmosphere. And so having written Don't Let Him In, which I think is quite a kind of cleanly written kind of, when I was writing it, I felt white. Can't really explain it. It felt like a white light. It felt
Hmm.
like being in a doctor's waiting room. Everything was clean, modern, fresh, um, uncomplicated. There were no dark corners or cobwebs, or I can't really explain it any other way than that. So when I sat down to write the book that I've just finished writing, I wanted it to not feel like that. I wanted it to feel like a dark room with like heavy wallpaper and a dusty lampshade. And does that make sense?
It does make sense. Does it affect your prose or the style of narration, that
I
feeling
think,
around you?
yeah, no, I think my prose always remains the same. It always amazes me when I look back at my romantic comedies, how even though they're so different, my prose just feels the same. So it doesn't really affect the prose, but it does affect the mood of the piece. And yeah, so the whole time I was writing this book that I just finished, everything about the book inside my head feels like this dark room with heavy wallpaper, and whereas Don't Let Him In felt like a, or one of those very modern kitchens, you know, with the white marble work surface. It was that sort of book, and this is completely different. So that's another way of, even if you might be revisiting themes you've already written about, that is a way of changing it for me as a writer, because I don't want to keep rewriting the same feeling and the same scenarios and the same situations, but also for the reader. Because I know some readers do like a writer who writes to a formula so they can pick it up and say, I know exactly what I'm going to get. And that's a lovely thing. Or a series, you know, like a crime series where the reader picks up the book by that author because they want to read more about that detective or that police officer, the police detective. But I don't think my readers want that. Maybe they do, I don't know. And I can't do that anyway. So yeah, but
So
that's a
they're
really
not
good
getting it.
question. Yeah, yeah, you're not getting it.
Okay, I have another question for you. This is from Christina M. And this might relate to that feeling that you have, the white room or the dark room, or it might be about inhabiting characters like Nick, who's just, there's so much depth. But anyway, so Christina M., her question is, how do thriller writers like you spend so many hours with evil without it coloring the rest of your life?
Yeah,
How do you help your heart and mind make that transition from the thriller world to
yeah.
home, family, cooking supper, walking your dog, etc.?
Yeah, honestly, I do so many book events with thriller writers, female thriller writers, and I've got lots of female friends who are thriller writers, and I would say almost to the last one, we're all just really normal and nice. We're just like just really nice people who live in like nice houses and have nice husbands, and I don't know any thriller writers who occupy dark spaces in their heads. And weirdly, I hope there's no romance writers listening to this or watching this, but I
There probably
genuinely
are.
think some of the darker psyches in the writing community belong to romance writers. I do think that, because I think you're kind of almost wanting to inhabit something that's the antithesis of what you live with in your head every day. And because my head is just full of like puppies and puppies and what to have for dinner, and like what I'm going to watch on the TV tonight, and I don't really think very deeply about most things. So I want to really inhabit those spaces when I'm writing, and they don't affect me. They genuinely don't affect me, which kind of sounds weird. Having said that, I know I'm supposed to be talking about Don't Let Him In, and I keep talking about the book that I've just finished because it's so fresh in my mind, because I only just finished writing it. The epilogue, I did write the epilogue to it at the end of the process. It did actually make me feel really weird when I wrote the epilogue because it was so dark. But
Ooh.
I still typed the end, shut my computer, and then posted something on Instagram, and then completely forgot all about it. So it made me feel weird in the moment of writing it, but it didn't linger. It didn't stay. I think you have to have a really clean psyche to write dark stuff. I really do think most people who write dark fiction have got very clean psyches. I think you have to, because I don't think it would be very good for you to go into those places if you had some sort of darkness or damage there. So
Yeah, it could really
that's my
just
theory
drag you
anyway.
down, keep you in that
Yeah,
hole.
too right.
Okay, so I want to end on a couple of fun reader related questions. And one thing is, what is one of your favorite memories of something that a reader has said to you at an event, or that's happened to you, or a message that you've received?
Oh, it's huge. Gosh, that's such a difficult question to answer, particularly this long into a career where I've met so many readers and had so many intense moments and connections with readers, connections that have gone way beyond signing a book and posing for a selfie in a bookshop. I mean, quite extraordinarily deep and profound things. But for me, which is always wonderful, and people bring gifts and people share stories, and all of it is just amazing. But things that stick out for me is when I'm touring in America, um, I don't get homesick per se, but um, I do. So this woman turned up at a book event with some books for me to sign, in a Waitrose carrier bag. Now, Waitrose is like the classic middle class supermarket chain in the UK. It's a kind of iconic thing. Waitrose. Say Waitrose, everybody in the UK knows what sort of person you're talking about if they shop at Waitrose. And of course, I shop at Waitrose. And she just turned up with this Waitrose bag. This is not the answer you were looking for. I know it's not, because it's so silly. And it just, seeing that Waitrose carrier bag in Austin, Texas, in the middle of a tour, just got me. It just got me. It was just really, really moving. And then there was another event I did in Indianapolis where a guy in the Q&A at the end stood up and he was wearing a Liverpool FC football shirt, and he put his hand up and he said in a very thick Liverpool accent, "What do you think about Brexit then?" This was, I think, in 2017, just after Brexit had happened. And it's just little moments like that that just take me out of like, oh, doing this big sort of, here I am on my American tour, being a big successful writer, into like, oh, I'm just I'm just a British girl. What the hell am I doing here? And it's like, having these crazy experiences. So yeah, it goes from the absolutely profound to those tiny little moments that just take me out of myself and give me a little lift.
Oh, no, those were perfect stories. They're so human. And I think that that's what we all crave from books, right? Like it's really that connection and that insight into people as people. And so
Yes.
those were perfect stories. Okay, my
Good.
last question for you is, what is something about you that readers might not know and might be surprised about?
Oh, gosh, I'm a very unsurprising person. Something that people might not know about me. Would it be interesting to know that I'm a quarter Indian? I don't know.
Yes.
There you
Yes.
go. My mother was half Indian, Anglo-Indian, as it's called. In India, they're known as Anglo-Indians. So she was Anglo-Indian. And I am thus a quarter Indian also, but I look exactly like my father. Hey-ho.
Well, that was a surprising fact to me. So thank you for sharing that. Well, Lisa, this has been such a joy. I can't wait for everyone to pick up their copies of Don't Let Them In. As I said, and look, don't let him in if they haven't picked it up already.
Don't let any of them in. The bad
Don't
men.
let any of them in. And where can people find you online if they'd like to connect with you?
I am on Twitter, X. I am on X, but I don't really go on there. I am most active and very, very, very interactive. So if you message me, I will reply. And again, that's another thing when we were talking earlier about misconceptions that people have. People think that I have people to do my social media for me, and I do not. I do it all myself. Most interactive and very, very interactive on Instagram. That's Lisa Jewell UK.
Perfect. All right, great. Well, enjoy the basking in the sunlight and the touring. And I'm just thrilled to have another one of your books in the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a brilliant conversation. Thank you.
Want more writing advice and career insight? Join thousands for free at creativeinspiredhappy.com to go behind the scenes with best-selling authors and get access to our book club for writers, creativity challenges, and more. I can't wait to see you there.